If you've ever been involved in conversations about education in the United States, you've probably seen, or at least heard of this guy, Corey DeAngelis. He's known as one of, if not the most, influential supporters of school choice advocacy, and for his relentless online presence that has recently capitalized on conservative culture war talking points.
The left is using the school system to churn out Democrat voters in the future who are going to be more likely to vote to take away your rights in the future. They're going to vote to increase your taxes in the future. So this is the number one priority. It ought to be, if you want to fight against socialist creep in our country. The fight is too important to cede to the left.
You also might have heard of him more recently when it was reported he had appeared in gay adult films a decade ago, for which he was placed on leave from his job at the conservative American Federation for Children. But what makes Corey's story worth telling isn't Corey's sexual conduct. The story is a perfect example of how tying your policy objectives to charged, reactionary political movements can blow up in your face and expose a self-declared love of freedom as a cynical power play that ruins any merit of your cause. It wasn't always like this. You see, Corey got his start in high-level policy work as an analyst for the Cato Institute and Reason Foundation, which made a lot of sense. Corey was pretty libertarian, and his writing focused on the cost of education, administrative bloat, and the difference in outcomes of students. Real nitty-gritty policy work about increasing competition so everyone can choose the education that's best for them.
We should fund students, not systems. And those children and their families should be able to pick where to take those education dollars.
There are actually 28 studies that look at the school choice competition from private schools on the public school student outcomes. 26 of the 28 studies find statistically significant positive effects of private school choice competition on the students who don't even use the programs that remain in the public schools, because the public schools start to scratch their head a little bit and allocate resources more efficiently.
And we can argue all day about whether we should have these programs or how much we should fund these particular programs, but I think we can all agree that if we are going to allocate the taxpayer funding to different services, it should go to families, and families should have a choice. It shouldn't go to a monopoly and a government-run institution, regardless of how well it meets the needs of individual families.
That freedom-focused methodology fit his overall approach to advocacy, which was about trying to broadly appeal to everyone about the merits of school choice. The left, the right, and anywhere in between. You get to choose what's best for you. If you liked him, cool. If you disagreed with his ideas, he was hard-hitting but not demonizing. But a few years ago, something changed. In his book that came out just a few months ago, The Parent Revolution, Rescuing Your Kids from the Radicals Ruining Our Schools, Corey explains how he felt this bipartisan outreach strategy wasn't working. They weren't making the gains they wanted. While some of his compatriots felt this was still the way to go, that it was just part of the work, Corey, as he puts it, went rogue and began coordinating with some like-minded colleagues to enact a hyper-partisan red state strategy that would propose school choice as a solution to culture war problems that conservatives were already up in arms about. This changed the nature of his arguments. School choice advocates had been emphasizing how these policies would help the most disadvantaged families. They made high-grossing documentaries like Waiting for Superman, a film that highlights the travails of lower-income families in Harlem and LA as they strive to be accepted into highly competitive charter schools, which was praised by both conservatives and some progressives, like Cory Booker. But once DeAngelis turned into a right-wing foot soldier in the culture war, he started highlighting not how school choice would help the least well-off parents, but the most conservative ones. Instead of emphasizing how poor kids would get a better education, he talked about how right-wing parents would get more control over the school curriculum to teach their kids whatever reactionary ideology they wanted.
The radical left has figured out that they don't even have to have their own kids anymore, and they can still shape the direction of the country.
They want to indoctrinate your kids, not to educate them.
They're coming after your kids. They want to use the heavy hand of government to control your children's lives, and ultimately that could lead to them taking your kids away from you for not being aligned with their political persuasion.
They're focused more on the LGBTs than the ABCs.
It's absolutely a socialist idea, and we should push back against that as hard as possible.
You can see how Corey all but explicitly confirms the drag queen groomer narrative in this clip from Newsmax, where he just shakes his head in reaction to the anchor engaging in anecdotal fear-mongering.
I just saw another video of a drag show for little kids where there's the performers spreading their legs like in front of these children. It's an epidemic. It is happening everywhere, and the left is telling us that it's in the name of diversity. Are you seeing states starting to kind of push back against this in some fashion, Corey?
Oh, absolutely, and parents are pushing back.
Corey even went so far as to ally himself with explicitly anti-LGBT, anti-trans groups, for whom school choice was only a means to an end.
Look, Moms for Liberty is doing some great work all across the country. Let's give them a hand.
Mask mandates, CRT in the classroom, secret transgender policies, males in girls' locker rooms. They were playing the hits. This new focus lit a fire under parents to turn up the heat on state legislators and hold them accountable on school choice. Corey hoped this would cause school choice supporting Republicans to then win elections, in turn allowing more of these school choice policies to be enacted. Success begets success, as Corey puts it. He attributed 11 states' enactment of universal school choice in the past 3 years to his change in tactics, which is debatable at best. And he always does it in the exact same way.
There wasn't a red wave in the midterms, there wasn't a blue wave, but there was a school choice wave.
They're never going to unsee what they saw in 2020.
Over the COVID era, through Zoom school,
Parents got to see what was going on in the classroom
through remote learning, which, let's be real, we should have called it remotely learning.
There wasn't a lot of learning going on.
But Vodi Bakum said it best. We cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans.
But the good news is parents aren't surprised anymore, but parents have woken up, awakening a sleeping giant. And these parents are never going back to sleep.
They're pushing back at the school boards.
And they're putting a spotlight on the status quo government school system. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we're seeing a revolution when it comes to education freedom like we've never seen before. And
He was personally reaping rewards too. He was getting big-name fellowships at more conservative think tanks like the Hoover Institution and collaborating with the Heritage Foundation. He was one of Forbes' 30 under 30 for education in 2020. He was a contributor to Project 2025. And Donald Trump himself endorsed his book, calling it a great guide to help moms and dads take back control of their children's education from the radical Marxists ruining our schools. But just as Corey was promoting his book, doing tons of media appearances, and making inroads on school choice reform, a far-right account exposed his involvement in the previously mentioned gay adult films. In addition to subsequently being placed on leave from the American Federation for Children, his name and profile were scrubbed from other organizations he had previously worked for. And he was radio silent on X for almost 2 weeks, which for Corey might as well be 2 years. He finally broke his silence with a post where he said, just like everyone else, he's made mistakes and learned from them, adding that he was a victim of poor decisions and poor influences, and uses his experience as fuel to save young people from being put in the same position he was put in, and to help parents protect their children. But Corey should realize his mistake was not being in gay adult films. It wasn't advocating for the freedom of parents to choose what they think is best for their kids. It was that, as he readily admits, instead of doing the hard work of winning over those who disagreed with him, he made a calculated, cynical decision to declare political war on one side and fan the fires of the culture wars to win by any means necessary. By playing into the anti-CRT, anti-trans, Marxist indoctrination moral panic, he embraced means that can only taint his cause. He shouldn't be surprised the tactics and groups he cynically deployed have come back to bite him. But it seems Corey hasn't learned that lesson. Just this week, he announced he's joining the American Culture Project, an organization who aims to fight the left that evidently rules by cancel culture and woke supremacy. As Corey himself would say,
play stupid games, win stupid prizes.